So I'm going to talk about building winning teams, and like I said, kind of applicable to whether you have an in-person team or virtual team. The dream is possible. This is our team, actually, on one of our team calls. And look at all those smiling, shiny, happy faces. So we are basically spread out all over the United States. We've even got Chingle in the middle here. He's in Portugal now. So we do have some people who are a little further away. We've got Jeff down here. He's in Hawaii. And you know, we've got all the time zones kind of covered. But we do a really effective job of communicating. And part of that is, as Ezra mentioned, is, you know, we've put a little bit of structure into how we kind of relate to each other, how we get together on a consistent basis. We've added some team calls in there so that everybody kind of knows we kick off a week together. We have a Monday morning team call, and we sort of create this, this culture. Because imagine trying to create a company culture when you're not in the same room, like maybe ever. Some folks, actually I think I may have met everyone here in person at one time or another, but there are some people who don't do a lot of traveling who they've never even met each other. But we really do try hard to, you know, to create an environment where people feel like they know each other. So I kind of, you know, in this short amount of time, I mean, I could talk for days, believe me, about my people, but I tried to boil it down to kind of 3 sort of winning strategies or rules in building a winning team. So I'm going to kind of start there. The first one, as Ezra kind of alluded to, is really the leadership. Like, you've got to have leaders in place in your company that really understand and value people and relationship management. You know, people can say I'm a people person. You know, you kind of get along. You're good in the beginning and in maybe like the light when things are good. But really, choosing your leadership for your team, people who have a real understanding of the management of relationships, because things aren't always sunny and bright and, you know, rainbows and unicorns. So, so leadership really is our number one. You want to have people in your leadership team who put other people first. They're super transparent, meaning, you know, they share the good and the bad where it's appropriate, so that people really understand where their place is in the team, how things are going, being as transparent as possible. And people who are willing to have the difficult conversations. Again, things don't always go super smooth. You got to have people in your leadership team who are willing to kind of like really break it down and put the company first. You want to have leaders who are willing to take one for the team. I've seen things, you know, kind of like stifle and slow down because a little mistake happened or something, and you know, nobody really wants to take ownership. You want a leader who's going to kind of slide in there and say, like, it's all good. You know, maybe it was some miscommunication on my part. A leader is someone who is really going to stand up and kind of like, you know, accept the responsibility as the leader of the team. Maybe it was a miscommunication, and try to learn from that and, you know, and pass that along to the team. A leader is someone who really understands the work-life balance. Ezra did allude to this earlier. It's something that is really important to our team. You know, it's okay to like work hard and grind, as they say, you know, sometime, but it's really important to make sure that you're balancing that out and setting that example as a leader of your company. And to also lead by example. You know, you don't want to be telling people that they need to, you know, act or behave or work in a certain way when you're not willing to do it for yourself. A little bit more on leadership. You want to make up your leadership team of people that you already trust and that you're willing to give autonomy to, because as the owner of a company, the CEO, you know, in the beginning, as Ezra said, you know, he was doing it all, juggling it all. But at a certain point, if you want to be able to scale, you've got to be able to delegate, you know, important responsibilities to your leadership team. And so this includes the responsibility of building and maintaining that team, which is really what we're here to talk about today. You know, your leadership really needs to represent the core values of your company and put that company culture first. So a little bit more about, so this is the number 2 rule, is really the company culture. And company culture's kind of become this buzzword recently. Not really recently, it's kind of, you know, it's got this buzzword, you know, feeling to it. And that's because more and more companies are realizing how important it is that the company culture is right to really attract and keep really good people, good talent. So while flex time and other sort of perks are really great, a lot of studies show that the most important element in your company to people, looking to come to, your company to work is really, the most important element is the people that you put into that company. And toxic employees really can ruin the entire business if they're not dealt with correctly, if they're not recognized. And certainly if you're on the hiring team, you really should be pretty good at identifying this in the interview process or what have you. But sometimes people, come in and they change, and the culture changes. And you really want someone who's looking out for that sort of, that shift, and it can be very subtle sometimes. But, really having an eye for maintaining that company culture, especially if you've worked, hard, as Ezra did, in the beginning, to really create a place where people felt safe, where it was fun. But, as you scale, responsibilities change, and you want to make sure that you always have a bead on, what the culture is. And it, really doesn't matter how talented a toxic person is. We're going to talk about this for a second. I have a little story about this. Toxic employees tend to create the fear culture, which you've probably heard of that saying before. And I have just a little story that illustrates this pretty perfectly, I think. And this is from a book. There was a short version of this story in the book called Emotional Intelligence. And that is a book, I think it was written in the 80s by Daniel Goleman. There's been a lot more of those types of books, written around emotional intelligence. And I think that is one of the, the sort of soft skills, but it's one of the most important skill sets that you can have for someone in your leadership, in a leadership position in your company. So I'm going to tell this little story about this guy named Melbourne McBroom. And every time I say that name, I think of like Dr. Seuss, like, this is the story of Melbourne McBroom, because he always did those sort of alliterations. So Melbourne McBroom was an airline pilot. And in 1978, he was flying with his team, his flight crew. And Melbourne was the type of guy who had a reputation just for being a real jerk, to put it nicely. He created fear in his subordinates. People were afraid to kind of, raise their hand. And he just was one of those sort of people who ruled in a tyrannical way. And he was in a position of leadership. He was the pilot. And so in 1978, they were on this flight coming into Portland Airport. And there was something went amiss with the landing gear. So they were coming, they're beginning their initial descent, and the landing gear was stuck or something. And so he sort of barked out the command, everyone, we're going into a circling pattern till I can figure this thing out. And the flight crew was sort of like, the fuel gauges were going down rapidly, and he wasn't figuring it out, but everyone was afraid to say something, because this guy had a reputation for just chewing people out, and he created this fear culture where people were afraid to raise their hand and say, hey, Mel, we're running out of gas. And unfortunately, no one said anything, and this plane crashed, and people died. Now, I know that's not, hopefully nobody's going to die from, something like this in your business, but, there is such a thing as, a team. You're going to go down with the ship, as they say, if you don't sort of, have a safe space for people at any level in your business to be able to come and say, like, hey, this is going wrong, or, I have something I need to tell you. If you have a culture where people are afraid to say something, bad things can happen. And that's just one small illustration of that. I know you guys probably all know who Gary Vee is. And he, this just happened to come up in my feed just, as I was preparing these slides a couple days ago. Where he says, like, even if it's your best salesperson, a toxic person, eventually you're going to lose. A toxic person is going to poison your organization. So, even if they're hitting their numbers, you're going to lose in the long term. He also, this is an article that he wrote talking about, toxic employees. They're going to slow your organization down. One of the things that is, and again, this is sort of a soft metric. You don't really realize until you're not hitting your numbers all of a sudden, or you're spending a lot more time, trying to work out issues. And there's always going to be, when you get humans together, there's always going to be a little bit of drama, a little bit of, stuff sort of going on under the surface. That's why you want to have people in leadership positions in your company who are, just really good at, at seeing those types of things and being proactive and talking to people, talking to the employees about it, making sure that people feel that, they have a safe place to, I want to say vent, or even just, say what they see. We have a policy in our company, if you see something, say something, which is, I guess, that's the New York subway also, but it's true. It's like we want people to feel like they can come to any one of us, and voice a concern. So this is a really great article that he wrote also. So the number 3 rule sort of, in our company for, for building winning teams is setting clear expectations. So nothing is worse than, a he said, she said. If you don't set clear expectations that are documented and in writing in some form where they can be referred back to, you're sort of setting yourself up. People want to do well. When people come into your organization, they want to do well. They want to succeed. So setting these clear expectations up front is a way that you're setting them up for success. But it's up to you as the company owner or the leadership team to get them the tools that they need to succeed in your organization. So that really starts with setting those clear expectations up front. And this is just 3 ways. There are other ways too. These are like kind of our top 3 ways for setting these expectations. The first one is job descriptions. What does everyone do? And this is something that, obviously we've all got our jobs at, in this company. But very recently, the president and I, Pepijn, who's the president? Hi, Pepijn. Very recently, we have made it our mission to really clean up and tighten up job descriptions. Who is responsible for what? I have, as I said, been in the industry in one way or another, one position or another, for about 20 years. And I've seen many projects just come to a screeching halt because somebody didn't know, oh, I didn't realize that was my part, or it's just unclear. So getting that clarity up front and having documented job descriptions in a place, whether it's an intranet or a folder on Drive where everybody in your company has access to see what everyone else's responsibilities are. Now, this is obviously part of a bigger strategy, which I'll get to in a second. But starting with the initial interview, and this is something that you learn by making mistakes, and we've made a couple since really kind of getting into this and trying to tighten down this process. So really starting with the initial interview, when you are bringing someone on board, it's important to be super clear about what that job entails. We just very recently had a misunderstanding. Again, setting those expectations. We wanted to hire someone who could work every weekend. We need a weekend person on our CS team. And we thought we made it clear, and she thought she was clear that she couldn't work every weekend. And so there was a mismatch. But really having something that she could go back to, and we said, here's the job description that we went over. It was, an easy way for us to sort of say this was the expectation. But unfortunately, sometimes you have to, let someone go if an expectation is not made clear. And again, so you want to make sure those misunderstandings that there are no misunderstandings, so that the relationship, because that's really what you're beginning with everyone that you bring onto your team, is you're beginning a working relationship. And you don't want to have, from the jump, misunderstandings that people are then, people become resentful. If we had, made this gal work every single weekend, that it just builds that toxicity into the working relationship right from the very beginning. So, starting with that initial interview, have those, even if it's just in bullet form, like make sure that they understand what the position is. Ask them, is this clear? Have them repeat back to you. Use active listening skills, and really you should have official job descriptions for all employees, including the leadership team, because there are leaders on our team that are responsible for different things. And as I said, it sounds pretty obvious. You should know what other people do. But many, many projects have, in my experience, have just come to a grinding halt because lack of clarity. So this is the second, the second way that we really, are able to set these clear expectations is having SOPs and scripts. So once, someone is hired for a position, it's a lot easier to show them a library of standard operating procedures, as opposed to, it definitely cuts down on training time. They're able to sort of self-serve a little bit. So we create libraries of these. It also, it helps a lot in consistency. So people are doing a particular task the same way. They get done the same way every time. These are especially important for things that are repetitive, things that are done, the same way. I'm sure Laura has a library of SOPs for all the different things that she's posting, and you're breaking it down into a step-by-step process, perhaps creating a video. We've done them a couple different ways, which I'll talk about in a second. And again, they become these perfect little guides for bringing on new hires, especially if you're hiring at a rapid pace, if you're scaling quickly. SOPs have saved us many times. We do it in this sort of format, the I do it, we do it, you do it format, which essentially is, if I'm responsible for a particular task, I will do it. I will demonstrate how it's done, whether that's in a video. Sometimes I'll record the video, which can then become part of the SOP. But I will do it first, and I will show them, how it's done. Then we may sit down together, on a Zoom call or share screens and do it together. And then you pass it off to the person, and they actually do it. And what we've found to be most effective is having that new person. It's a new task for them. They create the SOP. And it sounds sort of counterintuitive because they're the new person doing it. But one thing that we've realized is people have been doing stuff for a long time, take shortcuts, you skip steps. And in order to, really know that you're documenting every single step, have the new person make that. They're going to probably ask you a ton of questions, which is what you want. You really want that to be super thorough. So that's one thing. And again, saved us lots of time. And this also gives them sort of an instant feeling of ownership in that process. They created the SOP. They're, maybe a brand new person or brand new to that task, but they're actually, part of creating this library of standard operating procedures. And they really, I think, it gives them a sense of ownership. Onto scripts and macros. We talked about this a little bit. Well, Ezra mentioned scripts in general for some of our videos and things like that. But on our customer service team, you can imagine we get a lot of the same questions all the time. And one thing that you want to make sure that you're doing as a team and as a brand is answering those questions the same way every time. So scripts and macros, and we have our copywriter write those. Like they are, written in a way that they can be sort of cut and pasted and maybe tweaked a little bit so that whether they're using them in chat or in an email, they can kind of customize it so it doesn't feel too robotic and cold. But having that base answer for all of your FAQs is really key. This is especially important, as I said, for customer-facing teams like customer service. So take the time to create a library of these. Again, make them available to everyone on that particular team, and depending on what they're for, maybe to the whole team. And then the third, and this seems really obvious also, but it's something that has really helped us a lot, and that's having a visible org chart. This goes along with the job descriptions, especially when you're bringing a new person in, is who do I report to? So not only who does what, but like, who do I report to? Who do I go to when I have a problem or a question? These are the types of things that, you know, brand new people, especially in a virtual work environment, you know, they're out there on their own. You really, when you turn off that Zoom camera and you're just down to doing your, you know, your work, you really are, you know, sort of left out there, floating out there. So to have something like an org chart that is, you know, that is visible, that they can go and sort of, you know, look at and study, if you will, and, you know, they kind of know who their peers are, if they want to reach out, you know, laterally and find out the answer to a question, and they obviously also, you know, the hierarchy of, you know, of the company structure. So that visual representation has been really helpful for us. Last little thing I want to say here is, you know, with our team, we really try to, this is a little acronym, and it's a little silly, but I've been using it for years, and it has been really, you know, has really served me well, is really just trying to keep it real with your team. And this acronym is, again, it's very simple, but it is really at the core of, you know, of who we are as a company. We really want to, as Ezra said, you know, we're bringing people up from customer service positions. You know, these are people who know our brand, our business from the ground up. They started, you know, serving customers and knowing everything about our products. So, you know, this is just a little handy acronym that, that I try to, you know, keep in mind all the time. The first, you know, the letter R stands for recognize. So you as a leader, you want to really be, and whether it's you as the CEO or you have someone on your team, a leader on your team who's, you know, looking out for this stuff, is really like look for the stars. Look for the you know, the high performers, the people who really are wanting to do a good job, wanting to take on more responsibility. You know, recognize those people, whether it be, you know, publicly, you know, on a team call, in some way show them some recognition. The second, the E in real is for elevate. So when you recognize these, you know, these people, if you're really paying attention, you want to elevate them into, you know, positions of maybe more responsibility, more opportunity. Those are the people that you want to elevate. Bring your A game. This goes back to, you know, I mentioned earlier, leading by example. You want to bring your A game so that everyone, you know, on your team brings their A game too. And the last but not least is be likable. You know, don't be a Melbourne McBroom that's going to crash the whole team. Be a likable person. In our case, lovable. Like, I feel like our team, everyone is so lovable. But that's really important. You know, be someone that someone on your team would come to. Be the person that you would go to if you had an issue. You know, you want to stay away from that fear culture, obviously. The last little thing I want to mention here is team recognition. I feel like we are really good at this. You know, yes, this is an actual real Team Member of the Year championship belt, which we give out to someone on our team every single year. Yeah, we make a big deal of it. And it's, you know, this might seem sort of over the top. It's a little crazy, but it is super fun, and it's a way that we sort of bond, and it's also a way that we're able to recognize, like, we have a team full of superstars, but every once in a while, you'll notice, you know, one person just really, really stepping up, and we recognize that, and we have like a yearly little ceremony and everything. So gratitude, you know, like expressing that gratitude and that recognition goes a really long way. As I said, it could be a personal word of thanks, a pat on the back, some sort of public acknowledgement on a team call. It doesn't, you know, giving them more opportunity or more responsibility, kind of elevating their position in the company. That's another way to really, you know, add to team recognition. And it doesn't always have to be monetary. So you don't always have to like be writing checks or giving raises. This is more about just, you know, recognizing when people are doing a good job. And although, you know, a check doesn't suck at all, it doesn't have to be monetary. And you know, and that's just another way that we, you know, that we recognize the people on our team.